Bill Belichick. We're going to start there, I guess. It's kind of weird. It hasn't totally sunk in. I was actually literally just reading Gerard Mayo's transcript from day one of training camp before you walked in here. And it still hasn't totally sunk in, but it also is kind of weird that we're like, football is here, and for the first time in 108 years, Bill Belichick is not on a staff somewhere.
Yep.
It actually did come out that I guess Kyle Shanahan basically confirmed that he offered Belichick a job, so he could have technically had a job, but turned it down. So it sounds like this transitional period without Bill Belichick on an NFL sideline will be short-lived if we're to believe some of the reporting that's been out there basically since he's been fired. But Dan Graziano at ESPN, the most recent one, said Belichick wants to coach again. He's chasing Shula. People close to Belichick say they believe he still wants to coach at least long enough to get the 15 wins needed to surpass Shula. And then he'll have his eye open on potential opportunities as the season goes along. So that means just about every coach who's on the hot seat will probably have to deal with the speculation that Belichick is looking over his shoulder and that his bosses might be considering hiring Belichick. We, thanks to, I think it was betonline.ag, we've got some Belichick odds to kind of pour over. The most basic and the place we'll start is, will Bill Belichick coach in the year, we'll say 2025, next season? It could even come as early as this season.
Yeah.
Yes is a prohibitive minus 200 favorite. No, plus 150. Are we both on the same page here that he will coach again?
Yeah,
soon as the season.
He's doing a hell of a job of leaking it out there, that he wants to coach next year.
No kidding.
This is... this kind of felt inevitable even back when there were still openings and he was kind of working through the process. I know it came that the Falcons thing seemed like maybe it was on the table, but when you looked around, you were like, he might be better off waiting a year, get the stink off him, and then can pick his spot. Really, any job that opens next year, I got to think that he'd be a strong candidate.
We talked about this during the season last year.
Yeah,
because I remember throwing the Buffalo idea out there before he even. I think that was at the point where the season had gone completely down the crapper, and they were clearly not going to make the playoffs, and it was pretty obvious they're going to make a change. But even so, there was speculation, I think, about Washington very early on too. So this exit plan started before the exit actually happened and is continuing far beyond the exit. Related to that, BetOnline also had a market for, will Bill Belichick break Don Shula's all-time win record? Yes, minus 130. No, minus 110. I don't have a strong take on that. I think a lot of that will depend on what we're going to get into, which is...
What is it, 15 wins?
It's 15, I think, to break it, I suppose.
Yeah, that's
a lot, man.
Yeah, but that's if he returns, he's obviously going to have a good situation.
Yeah.
He wouldn't put himself in a spot where he's going to win fewer than, let's say, 8 games. Then 2 seasons of that, and you're on your way.
The more I think about it, it's kind of wild that the numbers are what they are, considering there really didn't seem, outside the dalliance with Atlanta, there wasn't a whole lot of interest in him. And I don't know exactly why that would change necessarily.
Well, I think the year off helps. I think that I'm not...
Yes and no. I think part of the reason he's probably getting passed over jobs is because he's old and out of touch. Is he going to get...
I don't think that's the... I think next year, your spots will open up. Like I said, the stink will wear off a little bit. There's also, I think, kind of this resignation now that he does not need complete power. I think that he's kind of relented on that, or at least that's what it certainly feels that way.
I will believe that when I see it.
So you think if he goes to a situation where, so the other one, Graziano's colleague there, Jeremy Fowler, said that he wants the Philly job in the worst way, or that's his sense. If he gets the Philly job, he's not going to have control of that front office.
Yeah, I guess
so.
Who knows? I mean, there's gonna be something in there.
I also, if he goes to Dallas, which is the other. That's if you want to talk about the odds a little bit. That's the even money favorite.
Well, so it's interesting.
He's probably not going to have that power in Dallas.
Before we got into the odds, there's a whole lot. There's a ton of Belichick stuff out there. All of a sudden, Colin Cowherd, I think he just was kind of talking about it and suggested or reported Belichick ideally would like to stay on not the East Coast but in the East,
on the eastern
so
side
does
of
that
the
include,
United States.
Is that? I mean, we talking Lewis and Clark type of stuff here, or what's the deal? Is that
This is the line
east
of
the
demarcation.
Mississippi? Is that
This is the midfield marker.
the Appalachians? I don't know. And he wants a franchise with a stable quarterback. So that's a pretty narrow needle to thread, especially when you're talking about what jobs are going to be open.
That's why he's gonna, if he comes back, he'll break Shula's record, right? Like he's
That
not
you
land in a spot like that
project,
you got a good chance of racking up wins.
So I think for me, two options jump off the page, and I hadn't seen the Fowler thing, but that Philly was one of them. Philly makes all the sense in the world. It's not very far from here at all. Like I think you can get on a private jet and be in Nantucket in probably an hour. There is a quarterback situation that's not bad. Like Jalen Hurts, I feel like it's the kind of quarterback in 10 years from now we'll be like, is he good? And we still won't totally know, but it's good enough, I think. The other one for me is Buffalo. I think McDermott is probably on some relatively thin ice, and I do think I buy into like the spite thing that Cowherd also talked about, the idea that he can come back and kind of shove it up Kraft's ass or Jonathan's ass or
somebody's
ass is probably pretty appealing to a guy who seems rather vengeful or spiteful. Dallas, I guess. Do you consider Dallas is the NFC East? Is that good enough for you? Considering that's basically in the middle of the country. It's southern.
It's gotta be
central of the country.
That's really straddling the line.
That is probably right about where East ends. But that one, I look at that and like if we're talking East, staying in the East plus having a quarterback situation, I don't know what the Dak Prescott thing is gonna. Who knows what their quarterback's gonna be next year?
Yeah,
it could change. Another one I looked at, Atlanta. If Michael Penix is good, but at the same time, they just hired a coach and they passed over Belichick, so that's probably going to cross.
It seems like
list.
they drew their line in the sand, where they stand. So I would probably rule them out.
One interesting one, Baltimore. If John Harbaugh decides he doesn't want to do it anymore, because I have a hard time believing they would fire him, but certainly Lamar Jackson. And in Baltimore, that one makes all the sense in the world. He can go back to Maryland, Navy, full circle. Got it. Miami, if a Tua deal gets done and for some reason Mike McDaniel falls out of favor there, I can't see that happening necessarily. The last one that checks all the boxes in that regard,
you're just picking every team in the league?
New England. And I don't think that one's going to happen. I'm looking at teams on the East with stable quarterback situations that are probably that's it. So it's a small list as it is. You look at the odds. The Cowboys are the favorite at what is this plus?
Which I think people are looking at.
So, even money, yeah. Cowboys even money. Jets 5-1. Eagles 6-1. Bears 8-1. Giants 10-1.
There's been kind of that Cowboys smoke for 2 years now. Like even before last season, I feel like there was if Mike McCarthy gets fired after this season, Belichick's things are trending in the wrong direction in New England. Like maybe that's where he goes and he can stick it to Kraft as part of that whole deal. But I don't know. I feel like Dallas, from a roster standpoint, might even be trending in the wrong direction. That feels ready-made now, but I'm not sure a year from now that we're having the same conversation about them.
And I don't want to zero in on the Cowherd thing, but it just doesn't feel. I don't know. It's just or the control or being the star, and if it's all about chasing Shula, then maybe it's not a huge deal and everybody's in play. At the same time, if this guy wants to come back to coach just so he can break a record, he probably has a pretty big ego that might have a hard time coexisting with Jerry Jones. So, yeah, I get why it's the favorite. I get why it makes sense. If it does happen, I almost think it's far more likely it happens as an interim in 24 into 25 than it does we get to the end of 25 and they go out and hire him. It almost makes more sense to try to save your season this year, see what you can do with it, and then kind of reassess it afterwards. Whereas if they get to the end of the season and they're at a point where they want to fire or not re-sign Mike McCarthy, who's going into his last year of his contract, you might as well try to find a better choice for the future. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit for long-term thinking, but I could see them kind of coming back on that. So yeah, for me, I think the Eagles, like I said, 6-1, Buffalo 12-1. Would be the two that I circle as the most likely outcomes, I guess.
So I thought you raising the Baltimore point is kind of interesting because when you look down the board, I was trying to find who's a 75-1 or longer that could be an option. And it really is just like you're basically looking for something kind of unforeseen to happen. So like I feel that same way about like Kansas City. Right?
Kansas City made sense until Andy Reid just signed a contract extension.
Right.
So you'd have to get
so
sick
it would be
or health
exactly
related,
like some really unforeseen thing. But like those are the types of things where like well, maybe if I just sprinkle a little on that. But like looking sort of in like that second tier once you get past the Phillies, the Dallas, I'll throw two at you. What about Jacksonville? Like I know it's not a sexy pick. We're not talking about a prestigious franchise here, but like isn't that like the AFC equivalent of Brady going to Tampa?
I was just gonna say these things almost have to be unsexy just because it never works out the way you think it does, and that's how Tom Brady ends up with the Bucs.
Look, Doug Peterson, mixed results, 9-8 in back-to-back seasons. I mean he's 56. He's not on the younger side of this coaching the influx of young coaches that is coming up. So like. I think they're in kind of a win now situation where they'd be okay with hiring a Bill Belichick and trying to go after it for a couple of years. You have the QB locked up. Trevor Lawrence just got his new deal. I feel like Belichick might be the best thing for a guy like that, where has all the skills in the world, but just sort of needs to button some things up, like the turnover problems and whatnot. Bad division, so you want to talk wins? Like they're there. They're very attainable. That owner, I mean, that you're looking for a team that's looking to create a little buzz. You got the international appeal, the London games. They're trying to build that like stadium of the future or renovate the stadium of the future, whatever it may be. 25-1. I don't know. That's a team that I know we think Belichick, we think like the history of the game and all that jazz, but I see Jacksonville and I'm like, maybe that's one that's a little off the grid, but could work.